All right. Hey there, guys. This is Miss Harrington, and I am going to be going over your spiral review answers that you have been completing throughout the week. So the way that we're going to do this, we're going to start with Monday. I'll pause. We're going to go through Tuesday, pause, and then Wednesday and Thursday. Now, if I go too fast at any point, remember that you can always stop the video, you can rewind, and you can go back to look at a box that maybe you were still a little bit confused on. So here we go. So let's start with Monday. So in this first box, it asks you to underline the nouns in the sentence. Now, we know that nouns will name people, places, things, animals, ideas. But more specifically, it's going to ask you to tell if the noun is singular or plural. Now, we know singular nouns represent one item and plural nouns represent more than one. So let's look at this first sentence. It says, the moon has thousands of craters covering its surface. So when I look at this sentence, I see three nouns. So I'm going to underline moon, craters, surface. So now I'm going to look at the second part of the directions and tell if the nouns I underlined, if they are singular or if they are plural. So moon, I know that that's a singular noun because when we typically think of plural nouns, we think that they end in S or maybe even ES. So I'm going to put an S over moon. Look at craters. Now what we just said, I see that this one ends with S, which makes this noun plural. And then the last noun in the sentence, surface, again, I don't see S or ES, so I'm going to label this as a singular noun. Let's look at this next box. It says to underline the verbs in the sentence. So verbs, when we typically think of verbs, we think words that show an action. If it's something you can do, it's a verb. And then we're going to tell if it is past, present, or future. So we know if it's past, that means it's already happened. Present means that it's happening right now, and future means that it will happen. So let's look at our sentence. Every night, the moon will look a little different. Now, I see a huge clue word here. The clue that I'm seeing is this word will, and I see that it's in front of the verb look. So this is a verb phrase. When I see a verb phrase that starts with the word will, I automatically know that this is going to be a future tense verb. So our verb phrase is will look, and we know that this is future tense. All right, going on to the next box, it says underline the adverb in the sentence. Now, adverbs modify verbs, or they're going to tell you more about the verb in the sentence. Typically, they're going to answer questions like when, where, or how. Now, a huge clue here is that if there's an adverb in the sentence that tells you how, you're going to see it end with ly. So let's look at the sentence. The moon slightly brightens the sky each night. Well, the first thing that I always like to do if I'm going to look for an adverb, because I know that it modifies a verb, I'm going to first find the verb in the sentence. Well, the verb is brightens. So then I say, or I ask myself, is there a word in the sentence that tells me more about this verb? Usually it's going to be in front of the verb. Well, I see the word slightly, and I see that it ends in that ly. This is the adverb that tells me more about my verb. And because it ends in ly, this is an adverb that tells me how. So I could say, how does the moon brighten? It brightens slightly. All right, let's look at the next box. It says add the correct punctuation marks to the dialogue. So when we're talking about dialogue in a sentence, this means that someone is speaking in the sentence. And when someone is speaking in a sentence, there are certain punctuation marks we need to use. Punctuation marks like quotation marks and commas. So let's look at the sentence. Riley shouted, "You are going to be late for school." So I know Riley is who this sentence is about. So then I ask myself, when we're thinking of dialogue and it's what someone is saying, what is it that Riley is saying? What words would be coming out of Riley's mouth? Well, Riley's not going to say Riley shouted. So what is Riley saying? Riley is saying, you are going to be late for school. So this is the part of the sentence that is the dialogue. So the part of the sentence that is the dialogue, we want to put quotation marks around it. So we're going to put quotation marks at the front of what she's saying and at the end of what she's saying. Now, you're probably asking, well, if this is the dialogue, what part of the sentence is Riley shouted? This is called the speech tag. This tells me who is talking in the sentence. And I have to separate the speech tag from the dialogue. So to do that, I'm going to put a comma behind the word shouted. And then the last thing, if you notice, every sentence has to end in a punctuation mark. Well, I know that she shouted, kind of like yelling, so I'm probably not going to end this sentence with a period. It would probably be best if I ended it with an exclamation mark. All right, in the next box, we see the question, is this a simple, compound, or complex sentence? Now, a simple sentence is just going to have a subject and a verb. Typically, simple sentences are not very long. I'm sorry, subject and verb. Let me correct myself. Subject and predicate, and the sentence is not going to be very long. A compound sentence is when you take two simple sentences and you're going to combine them into one longer sentence using a coordinating conjunction or those fanboy words like for, and, nor, but, or, yet, or so. And then a complex sentence is a little different than a compound sentence. In a complex sentence, it's not going to use a coordinating conjunction. It's going to use what we call a subordinating conjunction. So you might see words like since, because, while, things like that. And if it's a complex sentence, the parts of the sentence that are added together, they're not going to be two complete sentences. They're going to be what we call one dependent clause and one independent clause. A dependent clause will never be a sentence all by itself. The independent clause could be a sentence all by itself. So let's look at what we have here. While you were sleeping, I watched a movie. Now, I know that this is not a simple sentence because right here in the middle of the sentence, I see a comma. So I know it's not simple. I also know that it's not compound because I don't see any of those coordinating conjunctions or those fanboy words. So what am I left with? I'm left with a complex sentence. I know that this is a complex sentence because I see a dependent clause and an independent clause. My dependent clause is this first part of the sentence, while you were sleeping, because I wouldn't write that as a sentence by itself. My independent clause is what comes after the comma. I watched a movie, because that could be a sentence by itself. And at the beginning of my dependent clause, I see a subordinating conjunction, while. So I know that this is a complex sentence. In this next box, it says, which word best completes the sentence? So if you look at your choices, these are all some version of the word bought. So we're going to pick the one that's spelled correctly. I went to the store and bought some eggs. So looking at these words and which one is spelled correctly, I'm going to pick the first word because I know that bought is spelled B-O-U-G-H-T. And we also know that bought is the past tense of buy. All right, and then the last box for Monday says, when should we use capital letters? Now, there's all kinds of situations where you might need to use a capital letter. So let's start. Obviously, you need a capital letter at the beginning of a sentence. You're also going to use a capital letter for proper nouns. So it might be names of people, places, and things. And then we know as well, holidays, months are also capitalized. Now, are these the only times that we would use capital letters? No. Like I said, there are several different situations where you're going to use a capital letter in your writing. So we just went over Monday, so if you need to take a pause, go back over those answers, do so. I'm going to take a little short break, and we're going to start on Tuesday. All right, let's look at Tuesday. So in Tuesday's box, you'll notice that the questions are going to be a little bit different, but they're going to be similar types of questions and similar skills. So let's look at this first box. It says change each noun from singular to plural. So right here we have two singular nouns. We have child and we have man. Now, typically when we think singular to plural, we just say, oh, add s or es. But not all nouns are regular, meaning some nouns we would consider irregular, where we're going to have to do a little bit something different to change them from singular to plural. Because think about it. It wouldn't make sense to say the child's in my class or the man's in the hallway. We're going to do something different. We're going to change the spelling a little bit to both of these words. So to change child to plural, we're going to say children. And then man, we're going to convert that to men. Looking at the next box, it says complete the sentence using the correct verbs. We have two choices here, has or have. The moon blank no air. The moon has no air, or the moon have no air. Now, if you say those out loud, you should be able to hear which word sounds correct and which word sounds incorrect, and that would be the word has. The reason that we're choosing has, obviously it doesn't sound right if we say the moon have, but the real reason that we're choosing has is because my subject, moon, is singular. If the subject had been plural, we would use have, but because moon is singular, we're going to use the verb has. Going on to the next box, it says which adjective best completes the sentence. Now we know typically adjectives are going to describe nouns. They can tell you things like how many, what size, what kind, what shape, what color. Now if you look here, we have adjectives that have most, that have est, and that have er. This is what we call comparative or superlative adjectives. Now, when we use comparative adjectives, we're comparing two things in a sentence. When we use superlative, we're comparing more than two. If it is comparative, you're going to use er, or you might use the word more. If it's superlative, you're going to use the word most, or you're going to use est. So let's look at the sentence. It says, the moon is Earth's blank neighbor in space. Now, you might say, oh, I'm comparing the moon and Earth, but think about it. You're talking about the moon as a neighbor compared to all the other neighbors that Earth has in space. So we're really comparing more than two things in this sentence. So because it's more than two, it's not comparative, it's superlative. So I automatically know I'm not going to use the word closer here. So I'm either going to use most close or closest. So let's put them both in the sentence and see which one sounds correct. The moon is Earth's most close neighbor in space. The moon is Earth's closest neighbor in space. If you read those out loud to yourself, we're going to choose the word closest. And that's a superlative adjective. All right, looking at the next box, it gives you an example of dictionary pages, and you have guide words at the top of each page. It says which word could be found on this page of a dictionary. So we know those guide words are the words at the top of the dictionary pages, and they're going to help guide you or help you find specific words that you're looking for in the dictionary based on the alphabet, like ABC order. So when I look at these guide words, the first thing I notice is both of these words begin with R-E. So I really need to look at the third letter. So I have R-E-P and R-E-S. So out of my three words to choose from, again, they all start with R-E. I need to look at the third letter and decide which one of those letters would come between P and S. So I have require, retreat, or remember. So Q, T, and M. So knowing my alphabet, I know that the word require would go between these two words because Q falls between P and S. Which conjunction best completes the sentence? So I see three choices here, but, and, so. These are what we call coordinating conjunctions, those fanboys words. So when I look at the sentence, it says, we need to light some candles, blank, it will not be so dark. Well, I'm not going to use but because I'm not giving you an either or situation here. I'm not going to use and because I'm not combining two similar thoughts. I'm left with so. So let's talk about why so is going to work. We need to light some candles so it will not be so dark. The reason that we're going to use so is because so is what you would use if you have a cause and effect situation going on in the sentence. We know cause and effect is why and what happens. So when it says we need to light some candles so it will not be so dark, the cause is it will not be so dark, and the effect is we need to light some candles, the why and the what. So we're going to use so. Correct the two misspelled words in the sentence. The sentence says, I looked above the car and saw some tree branches had fallen. Well, I automatically see two words are misspelled here. The first one that I see is above, and I cross that out because I know the word above ends with an E. So A-B-O-V-E. The second word that I notice is branches because it needs an H behind the C. So I'm going to respell branches down here at the bottom. And then the last box says circle the words that should be capitalized. So kind of going back to that Monday box that we talked about, reasons why we should capitalize certain letters or words, we're kind of using that idea right here. So I know that I'm going to capitalize Mrs. Smith because that's a proper noun, it's someone's name. I'm also going to capitalize Atlanta, Georgia because it's a proper noun, it's the name of a place. I'm going to capitalize Catherine, again, proper noun, it's someone's name. And I'm also going to capitalize Dear Joseph Rivera. Now, you might be wondering, why would I capitalize the D in dear? Well, if you write a letter to somebody, this is the introduction of the letter. So when you're writing that introduction, you want to capitalize D because you're starting the letter. Think of it as like the beginning of a sentence. All right, that is Tuesday's Spiral Review. Again, if you need to go back and relook at something, pause, rewind, and we're going to go over Wednesday next. All right, so looking at this first box for Wednesday, it says, write the word moon as a possessive noun. So a possessive noun is a noun that shows ownership, that there is a noun in the sentence and something else in that sentence belongs to that noun. So the sentence says, the craters belong to the moon. So I know that the craters are the moons, meaning I'm going to make moon possessive because something in this sentence belongs to the moon. So because moon is singular, when I make it possessive, I'm going to add apostrophe S. Looking at the next box, it says change the underlined verb to past tense. So we talked about this earlier on Monday's Spiral Review. We know that past tense means that it has already happened. So my verb is learn. Scientists learn about the moon by viewing it through a telescope. So to make learn past tense, all we have to do here is add ED. The next box says, underline the adjectives in the sentence. So as we said earlier in the Spiral Review, we know that adjectives describe nouns. So in this sentence, it says, the moon turns dark during a lunar eclipse. So I see two adjectives in this sentence. The first one that I see is dark. So what noun would dark be describing? Well, we're talking about the moon turning a different color. So dark describes the noun moon. The other adjective that I see in this sentence is the word lunar because it's telling you what kind of eclipse. And again, adjectives can describe things by telling you what kind. Add the correct punctuation marks to the dialogue. So we did one similar to this on the Monday Spiral Review. So remember, dialogue is when someone is speaking in the sentence. Cereal is my favorite breakfast food, stated Timothy. Well, Timothy is the one that we know is doing the talking. So now we have to ask ourselves, what is it that Timothy is saying? What are the words coming out of his mouth? Well, Timothy's not going to say, stated Timothy. So what is he saying? We know that Timothy is saying, cereal is my favorite breakfast food. This is the dialogue of the sentence. So for dialogue, we're going to put quotation marks at the beginning of what they're saying, and then again at the end of what they're saying. Stated Timothy is our speech tag because it tells us who is speaking, and we have to separate the dialogue from the speech tag. So by doing this, we're going to add a comma. Going back to another simple compound or complex sentence question. This sentence says, my sister's favorite movie is the Lego Movie. Now, when I think compound or complex, I've got to see some commas somewhere in that sentence. Well, looking here, I don't see any commas. I have a simple sentence here with a subject and a predicate. So this is a simple sentence. The subject would be my sister's favorite movie. And then your predicate is the Lego Movie. Which word best completes the sentence? So I'm looking at all three of these words, and they're all differently spelled versions of family. So we need to pick the correctly spelled family to go in the sentence. My family is going on a vacation. So when I look at my three choices, I know that this last one is spelled correctly because family in this first one is missing an I, and in this second choice, there's an added E that we just don't need. And then the last box for Wednesday says, underline and correct the words that should be capitalized. When I went to Washington, D.C., I visited the Lincoln Memorial. Now, I see several words that should be capitalized. I know that when should be capitalized because it's the beginning of a sentence. I see I twice. Now, when we see that word I, like talking about myself, anywhere in the sentence, we always capitalize it. Washington, D.C., because that's a proper noun. It's the name of a place. And then also Lincoln Memorial, because it's also a proper noun because it gives us the name of a place. All right, guys, we're almost through. Again, if you need to go back through any of the boxes for Wednesday, take a pause, rewind, and then join us for Thursday. All right, we're on our last box for your first week of spiral review. So let's start with this first box for Thursday. It says replace the underlined noun with a pronoun. Now, pronouns are words that we use to take the place of nouns in sentences and in writing. So instead of saying the moon, 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 we want to take out all those other moons that we might use and replace it with a pronoun. So pronouns are going to be words like he, she, it, we, they, them. So in this sentence where it says the moon is Earth's only natural satellite, if I wanted to remove that noun and replace it with the pronoun, the best pronoun that would make sense for this sentence would be the word it. Now the sentence would say it is Earth's only natural satellite. Looking at the next box, it says complete the sentence using the correct verb. So remember, verbs are words that typically show an action. The moon blank around the earth in about 27 days. So we have two choices here. We have travel and travels. Now, looking at this sentence, I look at my subject, the moon, and I know that it is singular. So for this sentence, I'm going to choose the word travels with an S. When your subject is singular, most of the time that verb that you're going to want to use will need to have an S or ES. Now, if the subject had been plural, we would use that verb that doesn't have the S or ES. Which adverb best completes the sentence? So going back to earlier in the spiral review, adverbs modify or tell you more about a verb, like where, when, how. Your sentence says, scientists would like to visit the moon blank. So we have three choices here. Frequentlier, which if you say that word, we should automatically know that is not something that we would say. We would not use that. So we're down to two choices, most frequently or more frequently. So scientists would like to visit the moon most frequently, or scientists would like to visit the moon more frequently. So think back to comparative, superlative. Most would be superlative, meaning we're comparing more than two things. More would be comparative. Only two things. So what is it that the scientist wants to explore? They want to explore the moon. So I'm looking at two things that we are comparing. So because I see two things we are comparing, I'm going to use more frequently. The next box is going to ask you to write words in alphabetical order. So I have tarp, telephone, teller, tavern. Now the first thing I notice, all of these letters begin with, all of these words begin with the letter T. So I'm not going to look at the first letter, I'm going to look at the second letter. Well, I have two words where the second letter is A, so I'm going to look at those first. So they both are TA, TA. So let's look at the third letter, R or V. Well, which one comes first in the alphabet? That would be the word tarp, because R comes before V. So I'm going to write tarp, and then I'm going to write tavern. Now we're left with telephone, teller. They both begin with T. They both have E as the second letter. They both have L as the third letter. So we're going to look at the fourth letter, E-L. Well, which one comes first in the alphabet, E or L? We know that that would be E, so we're going to put telephone. And our last word would be teller. Underline the conjunction in the sentence. So conjunctions could be coordinating conjunctions, those fanboy words that we use in compound sentences. Sometimes they might be subordinating conjunctions that we might see in a complex sentence. So let's look at what this sentence says. Caleb does not like broccoli, yet he loves asparagus. Well, I automatically see a fanboy word here. I see the word yet. So because I see a fanboy word, that's a coordinating conjunction, it also tells me that this is a compound sentence. We're going to correct 3 misspelled words in this sentence. I can speak any language, including Japanese. I see 3 words that are misspelled. The first one that I see is the word speak, because it's spelled with 2 E's when it needs to be spelled S-P-E-A-K. Then I see that language is misspelled because it's missing a letter. We should have it spelled with an A behind the U, so it should be L-A-N-G-U-A-G-E. And then the last word that's misspelled is Japanese. We have a few extra letters here that we just don't need. So if we're going to spell Japanese, we spell it J-A-P-A-N-E-S-E. And then the last word, underline and correct the words that should be capitalized. So again, words that should be capitalized, names of people, places, and things, proper nouns, beginning of a sentence. My favorite book is Diary of a Wimpy Kid. Well, the first thing I noticed, the M at the beginning of a sentence should be capitalized. Book titles, because those are names of things, should also be capitalized. But when we're capitalizing titles of books or movies or plays, we don't always capitalize every word in the title. We're only going to capitalize the important words. So we're going to capitalize the D in diary, because that's the first word of the title. Of and A aren't very important to the title, but the last 2 words, wimpy and kid, are important to the title, so we're going to capitalize those as well. All right, guys, we've made it through our first week of Spiral Review. Remember, you can always pause, rewind, go back if there's something you were confused on. I hope this was helpful to you guys, and I can't wait to see you face to face. And if not, I can't wait to have the next video prepared for you. Bye, guys.